North is a first-person walking simulator that uses surreal imagery and minimalist gameplay to talk about the struggles of refugees in the modern age. While it is a reasonably enjoyable experience, the game's low price of $2.99 is representative of its overall quality. North opens on a screen telling you that you should play through in one sitting, easily achievable given its short length, and that you can write letters to your sister, a mechanic which is essential to progressing through the story. You play as a refugee coming from the south to a city in the north in search of a new life, but adjusting to a society that you don't understand proves to be difficult. That is, according to the letters. This struggle isn't really reflected in the gameplay, where the puzzles are mostly just obtuse or require some backtracking to find an item you missed. Without spoiling too much, one of the first puzzles took far too long to figure out on my first playthrough. It was very unclear what the end goal was, which made it difficult to figure out what I was meant to do. The gameplay doesn't really improve from there. North is just a walking simulator, much like Firewatch or The Vanishing of Ethan Carter, but it lacks the depth in gameplay, story, and character that makes those two games so compelling. Thankfully, you don't really need to feel compelled to finish North. It's incredibly short, and mostly padded out by a lot of backtracking. My first playthrough took a little over an hour, but the experience from that cut my second playthrough in half. In terms of its presentation, I appreciated the minimalist and somewhat surreal aesthetic of North. It isn't exactly pretty, in terms of high quality assets or textures, but it makes impactful use of lighting throughout the game. Moments like these were pleasing to the eye and would have been enhanced by a fitting soundtrack, which North sadly lacks. The haunting track that plays while you read the letters struck a chord with me, but the rest of the soundtrack seemed fairly uninspired, and often didn't feel appropriate to the scene. Jumping back to the letters, I found them to be a good narrative device at first, giving the audience an understanding of the situation and a general push in the right direction if you got a little lost. It grew stale pretty quickly though, and eventually ended up being a list of hints rather than a way to deliver the story. Overall, the story of struggling as a refugee is well delivered, but lacks the depth to really have a lasting impact on anyone, primarily due to the game's short runtime and lacking characterization of the player character. North doesn't provide anything new to the discussion of the refugee crisis, and there are more heartwarming and engaging narratives that can be found in almost any other media that addresses the topic. In all, given that you're only paying $3, I think North is a worthwhile experience if you have a free evening. While the narrative and gameplay aren't anything to write home about, North is a good example of how video games can be a platform for people to share personal stories. I would recommend playing through with a significant other, like I did, or a sibling or parent, as an alternative to a movie night, but you might be better off watching a movie instead.